Good evening, everybody. I have come to you today with a content. I am Gates of Dawn. I am the middest Dizzy that you know. Probably the only Dizzy that you know. And I am here today to present what I see as Dizzy's matchup chart for the current patch. You might notice we got a slightly different music going on in the background right now. Which is, I have stolen the music playlist of the PokeTuber, or the Smogon YouTuber BKC, because much like one of BKC's videos, this is a podcast. There is no visual element. I am going to have the matchup chart on screen the entire time. Go, I don't know, to take a bike ride or something, I don't know. You just have to listen to this. There's nothing to actually look at. I think that's all the disclaimers that I wanted to get out of the way. Let's get going. We're going to start with Soul. Soul is 6'4", in Dizzy's favor. The main reason that I think this is because of how Soul struggles to get in on Dizzy. More so than the characters in the next tier, the 55-45 tier, Dizzy has a very easy time completely shutting down Soul. Isoar especially is a bitch for him to deal with because it requires him to go into air approach options like Mana and Revolver, which are both definitely exploitable. They basically just, you are required as Soul against Dizzy to take neutral options that have terrible risk reward for you, just all the time. Especially because you don't have a good way of punishing Spike Floor and Block, which is definitely a downside for the character. The other character that I have in this tier, and the other character that I think is the definitively winning matchup for Dizzy, is Kai Kisuke. Wife do fight back in this case, and I think that Dizzy has a very easy time against Kai, relatively speaking. The important thing is that 2D outranges all of Kai's big pokes, and except I think 6H, but even that I'm not sure. And regardless, 2D is so much faster than 6H that doesn't matter. And also, his projectile zoning gets completely shut down by Chestnuts. Chestnuts destroying projectiles is a massive boon for this matchup, and it makes it so that Kai is not as much of a threat as you might think that he is initially. I also, my best wins come against Kai players, so I'm inclined to believe that this matchup is far from terrible. That's all that I have for the 6'4" tier, and moving on to the 55-45 tier, we're going to start with Mei. I think Mei is a winning matchup for Dizzy because her Dizzy 5K is longer range than Mei's, which shuts down that as a neutral tool. Additionally, Dolphins have a bad time into both Spike and Floor, which creates a bad situation for Mei because it shuts down one of her main approach tools. P-Fish shuts down the other main approach tool, which is through the air, with her giant buttons. So, Mei has a very hard time getting in on Dizzy, but also not as hard of a time as Soul or Kai. She still does have the benefit of low crushing 2D with Dolphin. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, which is good. And also Dizzy not having the best ways to get out of her pressure, even though Dizzy's 2K is one of the better ones for Dolphin RPS in the game. Moving on to Faust. Faust is a somewhat different situation from Mei, where Faust's problem is that he struggles to get his game plan going. Dizzy with Spike, I guess it's kind of a similar situation to Mei, but it's different in how it shows itself. Mei struggles to get in on Dizzy, Faust struggles to zone Dizzy, because Spike is such a good tool at shutting down item toss. It works full screen because item throw extends its hurt box. Item throw is 40 frames. Spike is 15 frames. It is not, you can't do it on reaction, but you do have a very generous window for shutting it down. That is the main tool that makes this matchup good. Other than that, you're just fighting against Faust, who I don't think is a particularly good character. He's got sauce, but Alright, this one might be controversial, but I'm putting Leo as a winning matchup for Dizzy. One of Leo's big character weaknesses is that he struggles to approach zoners. The reason that he's top tier is because zoners don't exist. except for the zoner that exists, which is Dizzy. Dizzy does have a nice time into Leo, for that exact reason that he struggles to get in. And this applies to pretty much the rest of this year, where they just kind of struggle to get in on Dizzy. You know, Chestnuts is essentially just a pseudo Happy Chaos Gun shot for her, where, you know, has to air block it, which means a ton of extra a ton of extra lag, which allows me to do shenanigans and keep the zoning going for a long time. Of course, this is a very good situation for me. Biken is a 6-4 matchup for Dizzy until she has 50 meter, in which case I do have to be careful about gun. It's not that big of a deal, but it is enough to sway this matchup slightly towards Biken's favor. Not enough to actually make it Biken favored, but it does help quite a bit at preventing Dizzy from doing shenanigans at full screen. Next, so with Bedman. Bedman is a losing matchup for him and a winning one for Dizzy because of a specific intricacy with how Needle and Chestnuts interact. So, if you do Needle, I am able to do Chestnuts and destroy the projectile on reaction. If you do instant recall, if you do instant error, then what will happen is that Chestnuts will destroy the spike and counter hit you out of the error, which makes Bedman's zoning game plan a lot less consistent and a lot harder to set up, which is, of course, only a good thing for Dizzy. ABBA, it's the same old song and dance as a lot of matchups with ABBA, like Johnny, Ram, Nago, Axel. A lot of the same things could be said about those here. If ABBA touches you once, you explode, but it's not that hard to prevent her from touching you. Slayer, similar situation. I think this matchup is winning for Dizzy. That might be controversial, but I think that with Ice Floor down, Slayer is a has a very rough time actually getting in on Dizzy, which is, of course, what he wants to do. This is because of how Ice Floor interacts with Mappas and other things. Mostly that his air buttons are kind of bad. I believe that those are all of Dizzy's winning matchups. We still have a long way to go, huh? Anyway, let's talk about Axel. So Axel is even because both characters can run their zoning game plan on the other pretty much independently of what the other is doing. The only problem is Dizzy, like, it's just whoever's playing better is going to get that win, which is, you know, the dictionary definition of an even matchup. Zato's a little harder. This matchup might be losing for Dizzy. I don't know. But as far as I understand, it's pretty much whoever gets the first hit is going to do very well. I think while Zato is maybe slightly better at getting that first hit, his turn is, of course, limited by how much Eddie he spends in neutral. If Zato spends a lot of Eddie in neutral, of course, that's a pretty easy win for him. But if he chooses to hold that Eddie for pressure, that can be kind of bad for him because of how Dizzy's neutral tools are, again, very good. Junker Shade is kind of a standout tool. There's very few other characters have a true reflector, other than like Faust 5D, which is gimmicky. Yeah. Geo is an interesting case because this matchup is very hard losing for Dizzy until she sets Ice Floor, when it becomes very hard winning. I would say it is about half of rounds where you are able to set Ice Floor, which is why I say this matchup is even overall. Gold Lewis is kind of a similar case to Giovanna, where the actual status of the matchup is very conditional, but instead of depending on Ice Floor, this depends on whether or not Gold Lewis has 50 burst. White Wild Assault is very hard for Dizzy to deal with, but otherwise, he really does struggle to get in. You're only worried about, like, Thunderbird in neutral, which is, of course, atrocious. Terrible, 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 but not really the end of the world, either. Testament is kind of a similar thing with Axel, and as we'll see later, Venom, where both characters kind of just do what they want to do independently of the other, and it's just a matter of who does it better that gets the win, which makes it an even matchup, in my opinion. Bridget's interesting. I think this matchup is either slight winning for Dizzy or even, leaning towards even, though, of course. Bridget has a lot of long recovery tools and is open to getting whiff punished, and Dizzy has a lot of good ways of whiff punishing long range buttons, specifically H. Michael and H. Spike both having extremely long range and very wide area of threat. Bridget has to be very careful with how she plays neutral into Dizzy. Of course, having a DP is very good, but just because of how Dizzy's neutral is better in this matchup, I believe it's even. Even though the risk-reward, even though the offense-defense balance is in Bridget's favor. Venom is a similar deal as Testament, except, unlike Testament, I don't know what Venom is doing. I mean, you can do a similar thing with Stinger as you did with the Bedman Spike, where you can chestnuts it, and it'll destroy the first projectile, and if he does another one, it'll counter-hit him. That's pretty good. I can't really say anything else conclusively. This character is new. Yeah, that's about all I got. So let's talk about Milia. The Milia Rage. This matchup is absolutely abysmal for Dizzy until she sets P-Fish, which is definitely hard for her to do. This is still a losing matchup, but if she has P-Fish down, it becomes more like a 55-45 matchup in Dizzy favor. Otherwise, 6-4 Milia. It's very hard for Milia to maneuver around P-Fish in a way that still keeps her safe from literally anything else Dizzy is trying to do, especially considering floor. But she definitely still has ways, and she has a lot of solid ways of keeping Dizzy from setting P-Fish in the first place, such as her extremely good air mobility. Okay, this music is not fitting. I don't know why it keeps giving me Team Rocket hideout arrangements. That is Team Plasma. Alright, yeah, Roller Castle. Cool. Where was I? Anji. Yes, Anji. Spin good. Spin really, really good into Dizzy. Dizzy, a lot of her zoning tools are very long startup and very long recovery. H. Michael, especially. Yeah, you can spin that on reaction if you really want. Which is, of course, very good. Dizzy is one of the anointed few who can very consistently punish Nagiha on block because her 2K is awesome. So, it's not dominant for Anji. Dizzy still has a lot of recourse here. That's kind of a common trend throughout this tier, where in theory the matchup sucks, but Dizzy definitely still has a lot of recourse. Jack honestly might be even, I'm not sure, but just because of how Servant interacts with Chestnuts just as a projectile while you throw it, I'm putting Jacko here instead of even, but I could see the argument for Jacko Dizzy being even. Sin is kind of the opposite case, where I could see the argument for this being 4-6. I still think that that Ice Floor alone shuts down Sin enough to where this isn't that bad of a matchup, but Sin does still have pressure that sticks to you like glue. Big damage, solid neutral skips like Elk Hunt and Beak Driver to an extent. So Dizzy definitely has to play her cards right, but not that right. Asuka, fuck man, I don't really understand this character, I'm gonna be real, but what I do know is that Dizzy does have options. Spike is especially good, depending on what cards he has. Michael is good, depending on what cards he has. 2D is good, depending on what cards he has. A bunch of cubes is really good, because 2P is pretty fast and recovers fast. You know. Say it with me, folks, depending on what cards he has. Elfelt's interesting, because the way Elfelt works is that it could be just, Elfelt just completely steamrolls you, or you completely steamroll her. Chestnut shuts down her gun zoning. Both Michael and Spike shut down Out of Repair as an approach option. Dizzy is one of the highest rewarding 5Ps in the game, even on trade, so that's good to deal with Rekka. Counter hit 6P gets her win condition, which is again pretty solid against Rekka. Oh god, I'm losing my voice. Fuck. Keep going. Chip. So let's talk about Chip. So Chip, I think I said Chip enough. So Chip is another character like Sin that sticks to you like glue. However, he does not have exploitable of a neutral game. Chip is pretty hard for Dizzy to deal with. Her defensive options are not well suited to stop Chip. And of course, she's very vulnerable to tightrope mix on Wake Up. Her reversal does not do anything to protect behind her, and it's not great at protecting directly on top of her either. So, rough time for Dizzy against Chip. So Nagoriyuki. Clone is very good. Fukyo Beyblade kills me for a block spike from full screen if I set floor, which I would like to. Granted, if I have floor set, this matchup becomes very hard for Nago, especially if he's at high blood. I could see this. I could see the argument for like Nago and Sin switching. I don't know. You can be the judge of that. Happy Chaos is Happy Chaos. He's just kind of zoning better, forces Dizzy to approach. If Dizzy can play in 2D range, we still have to deal with 2S. Chaos has good options to deal with whatever Dizzy wants to do at any range, and Dizzy's absolutely forced to play his game, which is exactly what Chaos wants, and that's exactly the problem. On to Jehani. My dislike of this character was long documented. Oh my god. I don't think this shuffle is working. Yeah, no. The fucking YouTube shuffle is broken. Alright, Sinnoh wrote 216, there you go. Johnny. K-Finder's big. K-Finder beats Just Nuts. K-Finder beats Michael. Dash K-Finder beats Stage Michael. Johnny corner pressure good. Johnny good. I don't know that I need to say much more. Johnny is just a character very heavily equipped to deal with what Dizzy wants to do. Fish doesn't help. Just Nuts doesn't help. Floor kind of helps, but not really. Let's talk about Potemkin now. Potemkin, if you're asking me, this is the bottom of the barrel. It does not get worse than Potemkin for Dizzy. Slide Head shuts down any attempt at zoning. Hammerfall shuts down any attempt at Michaeling in pressure or in neutral. Floor is impossible to set up. Fish doesn't mean anything. Potemkin just completely dominates Dizzy in every aspect of neutral, and if Dizzy can't win neutral, she can't win. So it's a very rough matchup for Dizzy. There are still things you can do technically, but it's a very rough time. Very, very rough time. Additionally, we got Ramlethal down here, 5H, JH, and 5H, Far Slash, and the Holy Trinity of air options make this very hard for Dizzy to keep her out. Ramlethal is, of course, by her very design, very well equipped to deal with zoners. Dizzy is a zoner, reminder. So, yeah, Ram kills Dizzy hard. For all of the reasons that you think she does, to be honest, and also H-Sword is very good at completely just shutting down Dizzy. And yeah, there's my list. This was about an hour shorter than the tier list, which if you hate the sound of my voice, you're probably appreciating. But if you do like the sound of my voice, go check out the tier list video. You already watched it? Yeah, go watch it again. And also, if you like the sound of my voice, keep an eye out for some Dizzy guides that I am planning to start making after Combo Breaker and Unica's release. Speaking of Combo Breaker, I'll see y'all there. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I think Dizzy's in a fine spot right now. I would love to see buffs. Please give me buffs. But more than that, I want nerfs to the Sinister 6 there at the bottom. That would just make my life a lot easier. Yeah, that's all, folks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.